Okay, so where was I when I recorded this video? I think I know. I challenged you guys a few weeks ago to figure out where I was when I recorded that video, and many of you did exactly that. Before we go any further, let me tell you where it was. I was here, in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Is that what you got?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I got.
So what can we see? Let's talk about the obvious clues first. It's clear that I was in a Wendy's parking lot. By the way, please take a moment to appreciate the many people who posted some variation of, "Sir, this is a Wendy's."
That's funny.
We can see several cars here, and I knew when I recorded the video that there were some cars with front plates and some without, so I thought that might make things trickier. I also knew that there were license plates from several different states in that parking lot. Having said that, I didn't really think that most of the license plates were very clear in the video. We can see a couple other buildings here besides the Wendy's. Both have drive-through windows, but no signs were clearly visible. High overhead, we can see a McDonald's sign, but it's not very clear where the McDonald's actually is and how far away it is. We can also see this van parked here that has a logo on it that says VSC. I'll come back to that. Okay, let's talk about the less obvious clues. I wasn't sure how many people would be able to figure this out, but this building is a Chick-fil-A, and some of you correctly identify it as a Chick-fil-A. This other building is a Wells Fargo bank. Now, I didn't really think anybody was going to guess that it was a Wells Fargo, though I think there might be a blurry red Wells Fargo sign in there somewhere. But I figured at least some of you would recognize that it was a bank, even if you didn't know what kind of bank it was. Also, the very tall sign for McDonald's suggests that this is near a large highway, probably an interstate. Now, even if you put all those clues together, it was going to be a little bit tricky to find this without knowing what state it was. I did some queries against the OpenStreetMap database to test this out, and depending on how many of those clues you were able to pick up on, you may have been able to find it that way even without knowing the state, but it was definitely a little trickier. Of course, some people looked at the license plates on the cars in this parking lot and said that they thought they were seeing Virginia plates. Now guys, I looked at this footage very closely and I didn't really feel like I could identify these as Virginia plates, but that's just me. I suspect that if you're somebody who looks at Virginia plates all the time, you might look at this and your brain would fill in the details and tell you it was a Virginia plate. Sort of like how I can look at this and say that's a New Jersey license plate, even though I realize to most people that looks like a mess of pixels. It's just easier to recognize things that are more familiar. Anyway, people who narrowed this down to Virginia had a much easier time. There are like 200 Wendy's in Virginia, but even that list isn't that long if you're willing to spend the time looking through it. That VSC van isn't as big of a clue as it might have seemed. That company, VSC Fire and Security, has operations in several different states, as many of you figured out. It does narrow things down a bit, though. By the way, I'm willing to bet that that locations page on the VSC site got a huge spike in traffic that they're still trying to figure out. Sort of like the time you guys broke the ShopRite website looking for me at that grocery store in Jersey.
No, bringing down the website is crazy.
Oops. Okay, let's talk about how you guys did. Like I said, many of you were able to find this place, and some of you did it pretty quickly. I think the very first person to find me was Jeff over on my Patreon, though to be fair, Patreon members got early access to this, so they had a bit of a head start. I watched many videos of people explaining how they found it, and those were really fun to watch. We also got repeat performances from Sonic the Roadhog and Daniel Peoples, so that's always a good time. And guys, thank you so much for sharing those videos with me. Watching those videos is really my favorite part of doing these challenges. Okay, real quick, I would like to talk about a couple things that were different this time around. First, TikTok introduced photo comments since the last time I did one of these challenges, and many of you chose to use that functionality to demonstrate that you had found this place by posting a Google Street View photo of the location in a comment. And that is fun, but it's also really clever because doing it that way allows you to show that you found the place without saying where it was and spoiling it for other people. And I really appreciate the people that were thoughtful enough to do that. Quick nerdy sidebar, that is an example of what's called a zero knowledge proof. A zero knowledge proof is a way of demonstrating knowledge of a fact without revealing that fact. I use that exact technique sometimes when I want to do a video showing that I found a location without saying where it was. By the way, I don't recommend using the phrase zero knowledge proof in a comment on TikTok. The robots don't understand what that means, and they will assume that when you say zero knowledge that you're being a jerk, and they will flag your comment for harassment and bullying. If you don't believe me, you can ask my friend Oliver, who has had this happen to him. Speaking of robots, that brings me to something else I noticed that was different this time around. I was surprised at how big of a role AI played in many of your searches. Of the explanations that I reviewed, almost all of them mentioned using some kind of AI for some part of this search, whether it was Google's AI results, or Copilot, or ChatGPT.
Well, I used ChatGPT to figure it out.
Nice. Anyway, my point is many people used AI for at least part of their search here. And just to be clear, while I don't use AI for my searches, I am not disappointed or frustrated at any of you for doing that. I am sincerely excited about how many of you are willing to play this silly game with me and that you're learning things and using the tools that you have available to you. So nice job. I do think it's notable though that the last time I did one of these Find Me challenges, just a few months ago, almost nobody mentioned using AI. And I think it just speaks to how mainstream the use of AI tools has become in a very short period of time, which is fascinating to say the least. Okay, that's all for now. Thank you guys for playing the game with me. I will try to do another one before too long.